It started with mud. Thick, red, metallic mud that clung to Jace Halden's boots like it held a personal grudge. Each step gave a slurp and a sigh, like the planet itself was disappointed he was still walking. He muttered something bitter about Elytra 4, galactic treaties, and the fact that dehydrated field rations never ever included chocolate anymore. The war had drained the planet just as it had drained the men and women who fought over it. Trees, twisted like arthritic fingers, reached toward a gray sky pulsing with electromagnetic static. Even the air tasted like it had given up. Jace was down to his last stim patch, and his internal HUD had stopped blinking hours ago, probably a victim of the EMP surge from the night before. His rifle, slung over his shoulder, was more ceremonial at this point than functional, like a security blanket with delusions of grandeur. He hadn't seen another human in 2 days. Enemy patrols had fallen quiet too, as if both sides were too exhausted to pretend they cared. He crested a ridge, expecting more scorched wasteland, but instead he saw a collapsed comms tower tangled in ivy and burnt cables. It rose like a dead god's crown from the brush. The structure was half swallowed by the earth, leaning drunkenly, but it was shelter. Sort of. He slid down the slope toward it, boots skidding in the slick terrain. At the base, between the shattered consoles and twisted panels, he noticed a faint flicker of movement. Jace froze, reached for the rifle. Realized again it was more useful as a walking stick. "Hello," he called, unsure why. Probably the early stages of dehydration-induced optimism. A pair of wide golden eyes peeked from behind a broken console. Then another, identical set, just to the left. Twin girls. Not human. Their skin was a soft, pale blue, their hair, improbably bright, like spun sunlight, hung in long braids. And their ears. They curved upward and back, tapering into elegant, almost regal points. Alien, yes. Dangerous? Hard to say. One was clutching a piece of broken circuitry like it was a weapon. The other just stared at him, lips pressed into a line. Jace held up his hands. "Okay, not here to shoot anyone. Honestly, I don't even think I could if I tried. This thing's more jammed than my comm signal." He gave the rifle a shake. It made a sad rattling sound. The girls exchanged a glance. The one with the circuitry tightened her grip. The other, slightly taller, maybe a few seconds older, if they were really twins, tilted her head. Jace could almost hear her thoughts. Is this human an idiot or just poorly constructed? He reached slowly into his chest pocket, half expecting one of them to shriek or vanish. Instead, they watched with predator-level intensity as he pulled out a small, slightly crumpled foil package. "Chocolate," he said, trying to sound diplomatic. "Earth delicacy. Rare. Sacred. Possibly cursed depending on the manufacturer." The twins didn't move. "I'm going to set it down right here," he added, placing the chocolate on a scorched panel. "My last piece. You're welcome. Or maybe not welcome. I mean, take it or don't. No pressure. This isn't a hostage negotiation." The taller twin stepped forward. The shorter one made a sharp sound. Possibly a warning, possibly her version of, "Don't touch that, it's probably poison." But the taller one crouched, reached out with delicate fingers, and picked up the foil. She sniffed it, looked at Jace, unwrapped the edge, took the tiniest nibble, and promptly burst into what could only be described as a joyful rant, half laughter, half song, flinging alien syllables into the air like confetti. She spun in a circle, then pointed at the chocolate, then at Jace, then at the sky. The shorter twin looked utterly betrayed, but also deeply curious. Jace blinked. Is that a good thing?" The shorter twin cautiously took the rest of the chocolate. She didn't eat it yet, just examined it as if trying to decode its molecular signature. The taller one was still singing, possibly composing a folk epic about candy. "Okay," Jace said, sinking to a sitting position against the base of the tower. "Well, glad someone enjoyed it. That was literally the last joy I had in this galaxy. You're welcome." The shorter twin took a careful bite, chewed. Her expression shifted from suspicion to stunned wonder. She sat down cross-legged, utterly transfixed by the flavor. Her sister flopped beside her, still humming. "I've seen peace treaties negotiated with more hostility than that," Jace muttered. pulling off one boot to dump out mud and what looked suspiciously like a baby eel. The taller twin turned toward him and spoke, very clearly, in their native tongue. The tone was curious. She pointed at him. He tapped his chest. "Jace! That's me! Jace! I'm human. It's not contagious." She tried to repeat it. "Shas!" He winced. "Close enough." Then she pointed to herself. "Era." The other one looked up. "Neva," she said with a mouthful of chocolate. "Well, Era and Neva," Jace said. "Pleasure to meet you. Sorry I didn't bring enough to share with your entire species." Era mimicked the word pleasure like it was an incantation. Then she offered him a flat, square piece of dried something. Possibly moss. Possibly very old meat. Jace took it, nibbled, grimaced. "Tastes like diplomacy." Era giggled. He leaned his head back against the metal and closed his eyes just for a second. The war was still out there. His squad was probably halfway across the valley or halfway underground. The sky would darken soon, bringing predators, human or otherwise. But for this moment, there was peace, and chocolate, and twins who laughed like light refracted through glass. He figured that wasn't the worst way to spend his last day alive. Jace woke to something poking his cheek, not the usual stabbing guilt of abandoned protocol or the haunting memory of orbital firestorms. No, this was much more literal. He cracked one eye open to find Neva standing over him, expression deadpan, tapping his face with a bent piece of conduit. When he didn't immediately respond, she gave him a second, more enthusiastic jab. "I'm awake," he grunted, batting the conduit away. "Barely. Stop it. That's not how we say good morning where I'm from. We usually start with coffee. Or screaming." Neva tilted her head, clearly not understanding, and handed him what looked like a chunk of fungus pressed into the shape of a cube. Era stood a few feet away, already chewing on one. She waved it encouragingly. Jace sniffed his piece and instantly regretted it. It smelled like moldy rain and hints of electrical fire. "Well," he muttered, "when in Rome." He took a bite, chewed once, and gagged so hard his internal diagnostics rebooted. "Is this food or a dare?" The twins giggled. Ira said something musical and incomprehensible, then tossed him a canteen of filtered water. It tasted like rust and hope. The sun, or what passed for it on Elytra 4, rose through the haze, casting long shadows across the twisted wreckage. The girls led Jace around to the backside of the comm tower, where a cracked hatch led down into what appeared to be a partially buried auxiliary pod. Inside, it was surprisingly intact, if you didn't count the flickering lights, the exposed wiring, or the very large alien skeleton in one corner, slumped against the wall like it had simply sat down and decided not to get up again. "Friend of yours?" Jace asked. Neva poked the skeleton with a stick. Nothing happened. "Good talk," Jace muttered. The pod had been partially retrofitted with scavenged parts. Blankets fashioned from environmental tarps, light sources cobbled together from plasma coils and battery packs, a storage crate turned into a cooking station. It was primitive, but clever. These girls weren't just surviving, they were adapting. Era pulled a loose panel from the wall and revealed a small stash of items. She beamed as she held up a rusted handheld projector. With a proud flourish, she activated it, projecting a flickering image onto the far wall. A fuzzy recording played. Alien figures dancing in slow motion beneath stars, with synth music that sounded like whale songs fed through a blender. Jace blinked. "That's either a music video or an interstellar mating ritual. Either way, I'm impressed." Era mimed dancing, flailing her arms like a malfunctioning drone. Neva joined in, hopping in circles while waving the bent conduit like a baton. Jace, caught between horror and amusement, stood up and gave the bear a shimmy. "You're welcome, Galaxy," he said, "for this cultural exchange." Later, while the girls scavenged more moss cubes from a storage container, Jace wandered to a corner of the pod and finally managed to get a read on his comms. The signal was weak, but he picked up a low-frequency chatter, mostly static but occasionally punctuated by words. "Recon unit, quadrant 6, possible civilian." It wasn't good, It meant the patrols were circling closer, probably tracking his signal. He turned off the receiver and stared at the rust-streaked floor. Ira approached quietly and crouched beside him. She held up something, a necklace strung together with wires and one of his lost jacket buttons. She placed it around his neck solemnly. "For me?" he asked. "Is this a friendship bracelet or a declaration of war?" She said something softly. It sounded beautiful, possibly dangerous, but she smiled, so he smiled back. They spent the next hour sorting the salvage pile together. Jace found a cracked holopad with a working translation matrix, limited but better than charades. He pointed to himself. "Jace," Era touched her chest. "Ira." Neva snorted and added something. The holopad translated it roughly. "Sister." "Better." "Modest," Jace said. He tapped the pad, trying different combinations until he managed. "Where are parents?" The girl's expression shifted. Era looked away. Neva sat down and fiddled with the conduit, quieter than usual. Jace didn't push. The silence said enough. He understood the way war erased people without ceremony. Sometimes entire cities disappeared, and all you had left was a trinket or a memory or a half-finished meal on a scorched table. He reached into his pack, fished out his last emergency protein ration, beef-flavored, allegedly, and split it 3 ways. The girls chewed cautiously. "See," he said, "now you know the true taste of regret." Neva spat hers out. Era made a heroic attempt, then swallowed with a grimace and gave him a thumbs up. Probably a cultural misunderstanding, but he appreciated the effort. Night fell quickly on Elytra 4. The 3 of them sat in the pod, surrounded by jury-rigged lights and distant static. Jace tried telling them stories, miming ridiculous tales of Earth, a dog that could skateboard, a man who married his robot vacuum, and an entire continent that still didn't believe in climate control. They didn't get the words, but they laughed at the faces he made. Neva tried to tell a joke in her language. It involved miming a lizard and what Jace hoped was a musical instrument. Era clapped at the punchline. He laughed because their laughter was better than any joke he knew. Eventually, the girls curled up on their makeshift bedrolls. Era mumbled something in her sleep, one hand still holding the foil wrapper from the chocolate. Jace sat watch with the rifle across his lap, knowing full well it wouldn't help. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe recon teams, maybe worse. But for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely alone. Somehow, in a war where entire species had stopped seeing each other as people, he had shared laughter, a terrible protein bar, and a story about a dog on wheels. And chocolate. Always start with chocolate. Jace woke to the familiar hum of malfunctioning circuitry and the less familiar sensation of something drooling on his boot. He opened one eye. Era had rolled off her bedding in the night and was now curled up beside his leg, snoring softly. Neva was perched upside down on a crate like a strange blue bat, one ear twitching as she dreamed. He carefully shifted, freeing his leg, and stretched. Outside the pod, the pale green light of Elytra 4 filtered through cracks in the hull, bathing everything in a dreamlike glow. He winced as he checked the diagnostics on his arm panel. Battery levels. Low. Water filtration, unstable. Mood, somewhere between slightly caffeinated and doomed but pretending otherwise. He stepped outside, scanning the horizon. A flock of crescent-winged avians screamed overhead like someone had thrown a blender into a tornado. The morning breeze carried the familiar scent of scorched soil and faint ozone. Either a storm brewing or an orbital weapon test. Again. Neva emerged behind him, yawning and dragging the bent conduit she'd apparently adopted as a weapon, pet, or fashion statement. She pointed toward the horizon and muttered something in her language. Jace activated the holopad, fiddled with the interface, and got Skyhole. He squinted. In the far distance, something shimmered. A ripple in the clouds, like the atmosphere was trying to unzip itself. "Is it always like that here?" he asked. Neva shrugged, then added, "Bad hole." "Eat ship." He nodded slowly. "Cool. So we just won't go near the atmospheric mouth of doom?" "Good talk." Ira joined them, holding up a rusted panel with a drawing etched into it. Stick figures, one clearly him with his comically exaggerated beard stubble, Another was Neva with enormous ears, and the last was Aira, smiling under a giant sun. "You flatter me," Jace said. "Also, why am I shorter than both of you?" She tapped her own chest and then his drawing, then crossed their stick hands together. "Oh, we're a team now. Well, that's official. Should we get matching tattoos or just skip straight to the awkward family dinners?" They spent the morning scouring a broken skimmer craft, half buried in the dust. Jace pried open a panel to reveal a half-functional energy cell, which promptly shocked him. He reeled backward, arms flailing. "Science!" he wheezed, smoke curling from his fingers. Eru applauded. Neva mimicked his flailing fall with theatrical flair, then poked him in the side. "Okay," he muttered. "I get it. I'm comedy gold." The twins scavenged wiring and crystalline filters, while Jace managed to repair one of his boots with a bit of polymer foam and wishful thinking. He stared at the broken pieces of the skimmer. The pilot's seat charred, control nodes fused. Someone had crashed hard, and they hadn't walked away. By midday, they returned to the pod. Era pulled out what looked like an ancient entertainment device, surprisingly intact. She powered it on, and to Jace's surprise, it worked. Holograms projected midair, bright, stylized characters with absurdly large eyes and louder voices, shouting at each other in what might have been a soap opera or a cooking competition. Maybe both. They watched in silence for a while, utterly absorbed. Neva pointed dramatically every time a character yelled. Era mimed cooking, tossing invisible ingredients into an invisible pot. Jace, not to be outdone, created an impromptu chef persona. "Today, we're preparing a delightful fusion cuisine," he narrated, stirring the air. "First, take your despair, marinate it in exhaustion, then garnish with a light dusting of existential dread. Voila! Field rations a la soldier." The girls burst into laughter. Era pretended to faint from the flavor. Later, while the twins napped, Jace snuck a peek at his comm unit. He calibrated the signal, reached further into the ether. Static hissed for long minutes until a voice broke through. Sharp, clipped, familiar. "Lieutenant Voss, report location. Hostile territory. Extraction pending." Jace hesitated. His thumb hovered over the transmitter. He looked back at the pod, at the girls asleep in a tangle of blankets and scavenged pillows, their faces peaceful. The message repeated. He turned off the comm. The silence returned, heavy and comforting. As night fell, Neva insisted they follow her to a secret place. Jace followed the twins through a winding path of broken hulls and up a rocky incline. At the top, they reached a strange structure, an old observation deck, mostly intact. Panels lined the edge, cracked but stable. Era activated a console, and suddenly the ceiling flickered to life. A holographic dome lit up, projecting a perfect view of the stars above, even the ones obscured by atmosphere. The girls sat cross-legged, staring up. Jace joined them. Above, constellations glimmered, alien and beautiful. One of them looked like a squid doing yoga. Probably wasn't, but that was his story. Neva traced one with her finger, then turned to him. She tapped his chest, then pointed to the stars. "You think I come from there?" he asked. She nodded. Then she pointed to herself, into a different cluster. "Well," he said, "that's a long-distance friendship if I ever saw one." Era leaned her head on his shoulder. Jace tensed slightly, then relaxed. Her warmth was strange, cooler than human, but comforting in its own way. "Maybe someday," he said softly, "we'll get to visit those stars. Just not in a burning drop pod, yeah?" Neva reached into her satchel and handed him something. He turned it over in his hands. It was his chocolate wrapper, cleaned, smoothed out, folded into the shape of a flower. He stared at it, then laughed. It was ridiculous and perfect. "You two," he said, "are going to get me court-martialed for being soft." Era whispered a word he didn't know, but it sounded like thanks. Jace leaned back against the cracked console, surrounded by starlight and silence. And for the first time since the war began, he let himself hope. Just the next morning, the starlight dome flickered out with a quiet fizzle as Era tapped the panel again, disappointed when it sparked and hissed at her like an offended toaster. Neva was already halfway down the ridge, tugging Jace's sleeve with the enthusiasm of someone who had either discovered an ancient treasure trove or a really big bug. He trudged after her, still half asleep and chewing on something vaguely bar-shaped and only marginally edible. "Is it weird I miss the taste of army rations?" he muttered. At least they were honest about being terrible. Neva led them down a jagged path toward what looked like a sunken hatch wedged between two slabs of collapsed stone. Faded glyphs marked the door, symbols like spirals, jagged lines, and what Jay swore looked like an alien doing jazz hands. "Ancient Elytran vault?" he guessed. Neva grinned and gave him a thumbs up. Era poked the panel beside the door, which lit up green and hissed open like it had just woken from a 1,000-year nap, and wasn't thrilled about it. Inside, the air was surprisingly dry and cool, filled with the faint scent of old circuits and something spicy. Possibly moss. They stepped inside, lights flickering on ahead of them with a soft hum, revealing a narrow hallway lined with crystalline panels. Holograms flickered to life, images of Elytran engineers, blue-skinned with long ears like the twins, wearing elegant robes and arguing about what seemed to be architecture or possibly lunch preferences. Era stopped and stared at one of the recordings. Her ears twitched. She touched her chest, then pointed at one of the engineers. "Relative?" Jace asked. She nodded slowly. The hologram flickered, then glitched into a loop of the engineer, dramatically pointing at a blueprint. "I think he's saying, 'This building needs more flair,'" Jace guessed. They moved deeper into the vault, passing rows of inert machines. Neva pressed a button on one, and it shuddered to life, projecting a 3D map of the planet. Tiny glowing dots pulsed across its surface, some steady, some blinking erratically. Jace pointed to a cluster of dots. "Military outposts," he said. "Ours." He zoomed in. One dot flashed red near their location. "That's not great." Red usually means problem or hot sauce, but in this case probably more like impending doom. Neva tapped a different icon, and a soft hum vibrated through the chamber. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing sleek rods stacked neatly, weapons, Elytran design. Lightweight, elegantly shaped, and humming with dormant energy. Era picked one up, twirled it like a baton, then aimed it at Jace with a playful beep. "Do I get one?" he asked. She handed him a small device instead, shaped like a tuning fork mated with a flashlight. He turned it on and promptly blinded himself. "Excellent. I've always wanted to weaponize embarrassment." They continued deeper until they reached a chamber that opened like a bloom. The ceiling rose into a crystalline dome, and at its center stood a device, a console surrounded by orbiting rings, each inscribed with symbols and glowing faintly. Jace approached it cautiously. The console lit up beneath his hand, scanning him. Wait, I'm not authorized. I'm barely qualified to use a coffee machine." Too late. The rings spun faster, generating a hum that rose in pitch. Then a projection burst from the core, an image of a vast machine buried under Elytra 4's surface. Its spires reached toward the crust, and its heart pulsed with rhythmic light. "What in the name of gravity boots is that?" Eris stared in awe. Neva muttered something, and the translation on Jace's wrist buzzed. "World engine." He blinked. "Okay, that's not ominous at all." The projection shifted to show the machine breaking apart. Flames, destruction, shockwaves across the land. The twins looked away. Jace swallowed hard. "So this is the part where I make a heroic speech about stopping this from happening," he said. "I should warn you, I failed theater class." Era touched the console. It dimmed. They made their way out of the vault in silence. Outside, the horizon burned red with sunset, or possibly fire. Jace checked his comm again. Messages, multiple. One from command. "Confirmed enemy energy source detected. Reinforcements en route. Engage on site." He stared at the words. Era and Niva stood beside him. The light caught their faces, their long ears glowing faintly like bioluminescent sails. They watched him, not speaking, not smiling. He closed the comm. Back at the pod, Jace took inventory. Supplies, thin. Energy cells, critical. Hope, rapidly depleting. Morale, surprisingly intact. "I say we fix the old skimmer," he announced. Neva blinked. Era tilted her head. You heard me. We patch that bucket of bolts and fly it straight to that world engine thing. Then we do something heroic. Press buttons, pull wires, shout dramatic things. I don't know, we wing it. Neva saluted with her mock weapon. Era gave a thumbs up and mimed crashing gloriously. They worked into the night. Jace reconfigured the energy cell, Era rewired the guidance system using a salvaged food heater, and Neva installed a mysterious component labeled Do Not Touch. Naturally, she touched it immediately. The skimmer sputtered to life at dawn, hovering 3 feet off the ground and vibrating like it had indigestion. Beautiful, Jace said, like a space-capable shopping cart. They loaded supplies. Neva secured the weapons. Era brought the chocolate wrapper flower and placed it in a makeshift cockpit shrine. Jace climbed in, strapped himself down, and looked at his companions. You two ready to rewrite the war? Era grinned. Neva cracked her knuckles. Great. Let's fly this glorified hairdryer into history. The skimmer shuddered, lifted, and lurched into the sky like a drunk dragonfly. Jace whooped. The girls laughed, and the world engine pulsed in the distance, waiting. When the skimmer coughed, wheezed, then jerked sideways like it had been slapped by an invisible hand, Jace clung to the controls with the grim determination of a man who just realized the emergency eject button was labeled in an alien dialect that might have translated to "Congratulations." Era and Neva sat behind him, strapped in with scavenged belts and one suspiciously stretchy vine, completely unbothered. Neva munched on a crunchy leaf snack that smelled like burnt rubber, while Era quietly adjusted the trajectory display with the serene focus of someone solving a puzzle box. The world engine loomed ahead, its towering spires clawing at the sky. It pulsed beneath the planet's crust, a throb of deep mechanical life, like the heartbeat of something ancient and not entirely happy to be awake. The skimmer's sensors began to panic, lights flashing, alarms blaring, a robotic voice repeatedly suggesting they immediately consult a qualified technician. Jace slapped the console. The voice died with a resigned beep. They cleared the final ridge, wind howling around them, and there it was, the access point. A massive platform of black stone, partially collapsed, flanked by broken pylons and tangled roots. The center housed a glowing terminal, shaped like a throne, and a sundial had a weirdly attractive baby. Jace brought the skimmer down with a lurch, earning a chorus of groans from the vehicle's abused frame. Okay, he said, unstrapping. Game plan. We get in, we shut it down, we maybe don't explode. Thoughts? Era handed him a device, a cylindrical tool with 2 prongs and a red button. He looked at it, looked at her, and raised an eyebrow. You're giving me a universal override key shaped like a barbecue fork. I feel incredibly confident. They approached the terminal. Neva touched a glyph. The ground trembled. Something shifted below, deep and guttural, like the planet had just cleared its throat. The central interface rose from the floor, tall and imposing. Jace stepped up, raised the override key, and paused. He turned to the twins. You two sure about this? Once I press this, everything changes. Probably. Era nodded. Neva grinned. Boom, she said helpfully. He activated the key. The interface pulsed, scanned him again, then opened like a blooming flower made of circuits and alien math. Inside the core, a sphere of swirling energy, suspended in anti-gravity, humming with potential, and a faint musical note that suspiciously resembled elevator music. Jace stepped closer, overridden by instincts he didn't know he had. The sphere responded, threads of light reaching toward him, syncing with his memories. Faces flashed. His unit, gone. His home, distant. The chocolate he gave away. The sphere pulsed. A motion-encoded catalyst, he muttered. Of course. Classic. He reached out. The sphere accepted him. Energy surged through the platform. The spires outside shimmered, then began to retract, folding in on themselves like reversing time. Systems across the planet went dormant. The tremors stilled. The world engine shut down. Era and Neva whooped, laughing as a harmless static wave puffed their hair into chaos. Jace staggered back, blinking, dizzy. You okay? Era asked, tugging his sleeve. I just shut down an ancient alien superweapon with a chocolate-powered override key and a barbecue fork, he said. So yeah, I'm good. They returned to the surface where the air felt different, lighter somehow. Birds circled overhead. Real birds. Not the mechanical spy kind. Jace collapsed on the skimmer's hood. Era sat beside him, mimicking his relaxed posture. Neva climbed onto the roof and declared herself queen of the rusty sky chariot. A few hours later, a human dropship appeared, descending in a swirl of dust. Jace stood as it landed, unsure of what to expect. A hatch opened, and a stern officer stepped out, flanked by soldiers. "You're Sergeant Voss?" the officer asked. "Last I checked. We got your signal. We've been trying to track that engine for months. What happened?" Jace gestured to the twins. "Diplomatic outreach," he said. "Also snacks." The officer stared. Era waved. Neva offered a leaf. Later, as they flew away, Jace sat between the twins, who had been offered seats and more rations than they knew what to do with. Era was dissecting a juice pouch with surgical precision. Neva was writing something in her journal, something that glowed faintly. He looked out the window. The engine was gone, the land peaceful, and inside him, something had changed too. Not just a soldier anymore, not just a survivor. He'd built something. Bridges, not bunkers. "So," he said, nudging Era, "do your people do medals?" She looked at him, confused. "Recognition? Awards?" he prompted. She mimed placing something on his head, then made a raspberry noise. "Perfect," he grinned. "I've always wanted the official fool who shared chocolate with aliens and lived badge." The twins laughed. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the ship carry them home. Tough on him. She stood there knee-deep in regret and dust, staring at a gravestone that, to the untrained eye, looked like any other. Chipped, scratched, and featuring a name that might as well have been engraved in ironclad memories. Jonah Varel, it read, along with the kind of titles that made one suspect either heroic sacrifice or a very bad mistake. Presumed dead, martyr, earthborn. She whispered it quietly, almost reverently. "Forgive me." The words hung in the air like static on a broken radio frequency. The alien woman, once queen, now penitent, touched the cold stone with fingers that had ruled empires and signed death warrants, but now trembled. Her ears twitched, long and elegant, catching every murmur of the desolate moon around her. "You're probably not even here," she said softly. "Probably just a rock beneath my feet. But if you are..." She swallowed a lump that felt like a collapsing star. "Forgive me, Jonah." Behind another tombstone, nondescript, covered in moss and thankfully lacking any fancy epitaph, a man blinked. He was supposed to be dead, atomized in a failed wormhole jump. His name was Jonah Varel, last known captain of the Free Solar Fleet and amateur interstellar curmudgeon. His first thought was, well, that's a new one. His second was, note to self, maybe invest in better hiding spots than under your own damn tombstone. The third was an involuntary snort that nearly gave him away. She didn't know he was alive. She thought she was speaking to silence, to memory, to the void itself. But Jonah was very much listening, sitting awkwardly behind a gravestone and trying not to make a noise that sounded like a dying space walrus. "Forgive me," she repeated louder this time, hands clasped as if she was pleading to a deity who had probably filed a restraining order against her. "I never meant for you to get lost, abandon ship, become space dust." Jonah's voice cracked out before he could stop it. The alien woman spun around, eyes wide, drawing a plasma blade so fast it sang a note sharp enough to shatter glass on 3 planets over. "You're alive?" she demanded, voice a mix of disbelief and something dangerously close to irritation. "I'm alive," Jonah said, standing up slowly, brushing moss off his jacket. "You're the one talking to a gravestone like it's your diary." He grinned, the kind of grin that said he was fully aware how ridiculous this all looked. Not exactly the usual way to make amends, but hey, to each their own. She lowered the blade, the light dimming from fierce blue to a dull hum. "I thought you were dead." "Well, you're not exactly a genius at planning funerals either," Jonah said, stepping out from the shadows. "I mean, you did pick a spot with 0 cellular coverage. Who even gets reception on a moon that's basically a rock with commitment issues?" The alien queen sighed, running a hand through her tangled hair. I didn't plan any of this. I only came because, her voice faltered, because I thought I owed you that much. Jonah laughed, a sound rusty from disuse but genuine. Oh, me? You ruled a damn empire, and you're worried about owing me? That's rich. It's not about the empire, she said quietly. It's about what I did. To you. She glanced away, ears flicking nervously. I ordered it. The betrayal. The ambush. The great disappearing act that got me labeled dead and lost in the void? Yeah, I remember. Jonah shook his head. I was beginning to think you just wanted a vacation without telling me. Not a vacation, she snapped, then caught herself. Look, I don't expect forgiveness. Maybe just understanding. Jonah raised an eyebrow. From the queen of half the galaxy? Understanding? You're really milking the drama, aren't you? She smirked, despite herself. I try. They stood there for a moment, the dead moon silent except for the soft hum of distant starcraft and the occasional sputter of a failing comm beacon. Jonah glanced at her armor, scratched, battered, but still holding that regal weight, and then at her long ears twitching with each noise. You know, he said, those ears are weirdly distracting. I get that a lot, she replied, crossing her arms. It's a genetic quirk. Nothing to do with the drama. Right. Genetic quirk. Like the time you ordered a solar flare attack because someone misplaced your favorite tea set. She rolled her eyes. That was strategic. Strategic destruction of a planetary cafe? Got it. They both laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the emptiness. The tension, thick enough to compress atoms moments ago, started to dissolve like a nebula under solar winds. So, Jonah said, what now? You came here to say sorry to a dead guy, but surprise, he's alive and a bit grumpy. What's the next step? She looked at the gravestone again, then back at him. Maybe we start by talking. Really talking. No crowns, no fleets, just you and me. Jonah smirked. You know, for someone who lost me in space, you sure know how to find me at my worst? She shrugged, a faint smile tugging at her lips. It's a talent. They stood there, two figures caught between war and peace, regret and hope, a universe vast and indifferent all around them. And somewhere, far off, a star winked out, as if the cosmos itself was waiting to see what they'd do next. Jonah glanced at the gravestone one last time. You owe me a hell of a lot of explanations, he said. Then I better start talking, she replied, because you're not the only one who's been hiding. And with that, the alien queen and the man who should have been dead began to unravel years of silence, one awkward joke and confession at a time. Jonah squinted up at the sky, or what passed for a sky on Saradoon, a perpetually gray smear that could have been an overcooked nebula or someone's bad space painting. So you want to talk? His voice was rough, like a starship engine after a bad jump, but there was a glint in his eye that said he wasn't about to run. Yet. She nodded, folding her arms across her chest, the long ears twitching as if they could catch every little lie he might try to hide. Yes, we owe each other the truth at least. She glanced at her wrist computer and flipped it open with a practiced flick. Time dilation, wormhole theory, failed jumps, and one very badly timed explosion later. You're alive against all odds. She gave a small, bitter laugh. The galaxy still hasn't forgiven me for that. They think I abandoned you. Jonah scoffed. Abandoned? They have no idea. I wasn't exactly planning on ghosting the universe. I just got lost, he waved vaguely at the rocky moonscape. Lost in space is an understatement. I was stuck in a quantum limbo, which is sort of like being on hold with the Galactic Federation customer service but without the soothing elevator music. She rolled her eyes. Always the comedian. Well, somebody's got to keep things light. He poked at a nearby gravestone with his boot. How about you? What's your story? Still conquering empires or trying to fix the mess you left behind? She hesitated. The empire is fracturing. Rebellions, power struggles, planetary uprisings. You name it. Her eyes flicked to the horizon. I thought if I confessed to you, maybe I could find a way back to the woman I used to be. or at least figure out who she was. Jonah's grin widened. Confession, huh? Don't sound like the queen I remember. More like a guilt-ridden barista spilling galactic secrets over espresso. Barista? She smirked, lips twitching despite herself. I suppose it's better than being the warlord who accidentally turned 3 moons into asteroid fields. Hey, the moons were being unruly, Jonah said, mock defensive. A strategic necessity. And the casualties? She asked sharply. Jonah shrugged. Collateral damage, or as I like to call it, those who didn't get the memo. She laughed, a sound rare and warm, like sunlight breaking through the ion storms. You're impossible. Someone has to be. He pointed at his chest. Besides, I was supposed to be dead. You owe me a proper funeral at least. I'm a man of tradition. You would have hated it, she said softly. They held a state funeral in your honor. There was crying, speeches, and a hologram that looked suspiciously like it was made by a malfunctioning droid. That explains the singing. Jonah rubbed the back of his neck. I'm still traumatized. They fell silent, the weight of years pressing down but softened by shared humor. Then she said, Do you know why I came here? To this graveyard of forgotten heroes? Jonah raised an eyebrow. Besides the free Wi-Fi? Because I needed to speak to you, to the memory of you. I was trying to make peace with what I did, with what we both lost. And now that I'm standing here, very much alive and probably smelling like a swamp, what does that change? Everything. Her voice was steady now. Because you're not just a memory. You're here. And I can't keep hiding behind apologies whispered to stone. Jonah chuckled. Apologies whispered to stone? That's almost poetic for you. Only almost, she sighed. Look, Jonah, there are things you don't know. Secrets kept even from you. There were forces working against us. Enemies in the shadows who wanted this war to continue. Enemies, huh? Sounds like a classic space soap opera. Jonah shook his head. Next, you'll tell me there was a secret council of alien raccoons. She smiled, the ghost of a laugh on her lips. Not raccoons, but close enough. A coalition bent on chaos, profiting from endless conflict. They engineered our downfall. Jonah's eyes narrowed. So, you're saying we were pawns? More like trapped pieces on a galactic chessboard, she admitted. But now, knowing you're alive, we might have a chance to checkmate them. He rubbed his chin, considering. Checkmate the universe? That's ambitious. Well, if we're going to survive, we have to be. Together. Jonah grinned, flashing teeth worn from too many battles and not enough dental care. All right, Your Majesty, lead the way. Just promise me no more surprise disappearances. She held out her hand, long ears twitching expectantly. Deal. No more disappearing acts. He took it, the weight of the past lifting, if only a little. And somewhere in the vast silence of the cosmos, a faint beep sounded from her wrist computer. An alert, a reminder, or maybe just the universe's way of saying, buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Jonah looked at her, eyes gleaming with mischief. So what's the first step on this little take down the shadow coalition plan of yours? She smirked. Step 1, find better snacks than protein cubes. Jonah laughed. Finally, something we agree on. And with that, 2 broken souls, bound by war and laughter, began plotting a future written not in stardust and regret, but in hope and absurdity. She sat across from Jonah in the cramped cockpit of the Starling, the stolen star cruiser that smelled faintly of burnt circuits and poor decisions. Jonah fiddled with the navigation panel, trying to remember which button did what without accidentally launching them into a supernova. So you're telling me, he said, that the entire galaxy is basically controlled by a shadow group that's been playing us like interstellar chess pieces? And we only find out because you decided to confess to a guy you thought was dead? She rolled her long ears back in mild irritation. It's more complicated than that. But yes, more or less. These shadow players profit from war and chaos. They keep fueling conflicts to control resources, manipulate governments, and feed off the misery of billions. She tapped a glowing hollow screen, showing a web of connections between corrupt officials, rogue factions, and mysterious financial flows. They're called the Consortium of the Void, Jonah whistled. Catchy name. Sounds like a bad nightclub. Don't mock, she warned. They have spies everywhere, even here. She glanced at the blinking alert light on the console. We're on their radar now. Jonah laughed. Of course we are. Because why wouldn't the galaxy's most notorious missing man and ex-queen be high-priority targets? She smirked. We need allies. Like who? The Free Solar Fleet? Jonah shook his head. They declared me dead and sent a search party to burn my ship to stardust. I'm not exactly their favorite son anymore. Her expression softened. There are still those who believe in you. A handful of rebels, old friends, even a few who question the consortium's influence. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Rebels? Like space pirates with questionable hygiene? Not all of them, she said with a laugh. Some are idealists. Others are just tired of the endless war. Sounds like my kind of crowd, Jonah grinned. I'll raise a toast to that once we find decent alcohol. She shook her head. Priorities. Jonah tapped a button, and the ship hummed as it shifted course. So, what's the plan? We go hunting for these mysterious puppeteers and expose them? Sounds risky. She nodded. Risky, yes, but necessary. If we don't act, the war will consume everything. We'll be the last generation to fight or to live. Jonah looked out the viewport, stars streaking past as the Starling jumped into hyperspace. You ever think about just running away? Every day, she admitted, but running doesn't solve anything. True. Jonah rubbed his chin. So step 1, find the rebels. Step 2, find out who's pulling the strings. Step 3, crash their party. Precisely. She leaned back, a rare smile breaking through. You make it sound so simple, Jonah shrugged. Life's complicated, but that doesn't mean we can't have a little fun. He grinned. Besides, if we don't laugh, we'll cry. Or worse, listen to more of your royal speeches. She raised an eyebrow. Careful, Captain. I might just start charging you for those. They shared a laugh, the tension easing as the ship sped toward uncertain futures. Somewhere out there, the consortium of the void waited, unaware that 2 of their most notorious adversaries were already plotting their downfall. Armed with wit, stubbornness, and a questionable playlist of ancient Earth music. Jonah glanced at her, eyes gleaming with mischief. Ready to shake up the galaxy? She nodded. Let's make sure they never see us coming. And with that, the alien queen and the man who refused to stay dead set course for rebellion, redemption, and whatever chaos the stars had in store. The Starling drifted through the black between stars, a speck of rust and defiance in a universe that didn't much care for either. Jonah leaned back, one boot resting on the control panel as the ship's soft hum filled the cramped cockpit. So, Queen of the Galaxy, what's our game plan for infiltrating a shadowy, galaxy-spanning conspiracy that probably has access to more gadgets than a tech bazaar on Korath Prime? She tapped her long ears, thoughtful as always. We don't storm the gates like a bunch of space barbarians. That's how we got ourselves nearly vaporized the first time. Her eyes flicked to the holomap, where blinking dots marked potential allies and enemies alike. We move quietly, gather intel, build alliances, and hit them where it hurts. Jonah snorted. Sounds like a lot of sitting around and awkward conversations. Not quite, she smiled slyly. I know a guy. A guy? Jonah's eyebrow twitched. That's very specific. Very specific, she confirmed. His name's Dex, a hacker, smuggler, part-time informant, and all-around pain in the neural net. He owes me a favor. Jonah chuckled. Great, a shady hacker named Dex. What could possibly go wrong? She shrugged. Everything. But Dex is good, and we need him. The ship's comm crackled, and a garbled voice filled the cabin. Starling, this is Dex. I hear you're looking for me. Meet me at Theta Station, and bring snacks. I'm starving. The voice dropped off with a digital wink that only Jonah seemed to imagine. Snacks? Jonah grinned. You did mention food. Priority 1, she said firmly. Nothing kills morale like bad rations. The journey to Theta Station was punctuated by Jonah's attempts to decode the Starling's ancient entertainment system. He failed spectacularly. This playlist is worse than a serenade from a drunken hollowbard, he complained. She just laughed, ears twitching. At Theta Station, The duo slipped past security drones and wandering mercenaries to a dimly lit cantina where Dex held court over a tangled mess of wires and glowing screens. Dex looked up, eyes sharp and amused. Well, if it isn't the galaxy's favorite fugitives. To what do I owe this pleasure? We need information, she said, cutting to the chase. About the consortium, about the war. Dex grinned, fingers dancing over a keyboard. Information's my business, but it's expensive. What are you offering? Jonah raised a brow. You want food? Dex laughed. Funny. I want access to the Starling's weapon systems. Something tells me your ship's not just a glorified rust bucket. It's more than that, she said softly. It's our home. Dex's grin faded into something almost serious. All right, deal. But be warned, once you open this door, there's no going back. The hacking began, lights flickering and data streaming in bursts faster than a supernova. Dex pulled up files, encrypted transmissions, secret meetings. The consortium's reach was staggering. Corrupt politicians, mercenary fleets, even rogue AI units programmed to stoke conflict. Jonah whistled. They're everywhere. She nodded grimly. That's why we have to be smarter. Strike where they least expect. Dex leaned back, smirking. You're playing a dangerous game, Queen, but if anyone can pull it off, it's you. And your living legend of a captain. Jonah chuckled. Living legend? More like the galaxy's worst-kept secret. Dex waved a hand. Details, details. Now let me show you what I found. He pulled up a holomap highlighting a secret consortium base hidden beneath the surface of a dying star. A star? Jonah blinked. That's ambitious. Deadly, she agreed, but also a perfect place to disappear. Dex's fingers danced, overlaying schematics and security protocols. If we can get inside, we might find the evidence we need to expose them. Jonah shook his head, smiling despite the danger. You know, when I signed up for this, I thought I'd be dodging space pirates, not sneaking into a star's core. She laughed, ears flicking playfully. Life's full of surprises. Dex grinned. So ready to become legends? Jonah glanced at her, the weight of their mission heavy but lightened by camaraderie and jokes. After you, Your Majesty. The starling powered up, ready to dive into the heart of darkness, armed with hope, defiance, and just enough humor to keep them sane. Jonah grinned as the starling coasted out of the star's dying embrace, sensors buzzing with data that could topple empires. So, he said, stretching limbs that hadn't quite forgiven years of quantum limbo, we actually did it. We broke into the heart of the beast without getting turned into cosmic dust. She chuckled, long ears twitching in amusement. Against all odds, yes, Dex's hacking skills were the starship fuel that got us through the firewall, and the security droids. Speaking of Dex, Jonah glanced at the flickering holocom where the grinning hacker was already plotting their next move. Think he'll stick around or vanish like a neutron star's glow? Knowing him, he'll be orbiting us like an annoying satellite, but we'll take what we can get. Jonah's smile faded for a moment, eyes thoughtful. You know, when I first knelt at that grave, whispering, "Forgive me," I thought the story ended there, with death, regret, and silence. She nodded slowly. And now? Now it's about forgiveness, between us, for the past, for mistakes. It's about living, even when the universe seems set on erasing you. Her gaze softened, almost vulnerable. I was so sure that losing you meant losing everything, that the empire, my crown, my legacy were all I had. But they're not. What matters are the connections we make, even broken ones. Jonah reached out, fingers brushing hers. So what's next for the Queen who asked forgiveness at a grave that wasn't quite hers? She smiled, the weight of 1,000 stars behind her eyes. We rebuild, not just the empire, but trust, hope, and maybe, just maybe, a life beyond war. He laughed softly. Guess I'm lucky I'm not actually dead, huh? Lucky for you, she teased, but maybe luck had less to do with it than stubbornness. Jonah shook his head with mock offense. I prefer to call it unparalleled survival skills. They shared a quiet laugh, the galaxy sprawling endlessly before them, full of unknowns and possibilities. The consortium's grip was broken, exposed to the light, their shadows scattering like cosmic dust. Dex's voice crackled over the comm again. You two planning a victory party or just gonna keep playing space rebels with a cause? Jonah grinned. Both. But first, better snacks. She laughed, the sound echoing through the cockpit like a promise. And maybe a better playlist. Deal, Jonah said, eyes shining with newfound purpose. Together, they set a course for a future neither had dared to imagine. One forged not from power or regret, but from forgiveness, resilience, and the unyielding hope that even the darkest stars could be reborn. The stars blinked lazily above the sleepy town of Ashford, Oregon, like indifferent spectators at a theater that hadn't quite caught their interest yet. The kind of town where the most scandalous event was Mrs. Patterson's cat knocking over a garden gnome, or so the humans believed. Yet tonight, far beyond the city's flickering streetlights and muffled snores, something entirely unordinary unfolded. Virelli, a visitor from the distant spiral arms of a galaxy so far-flung it made your GPS scream in confusion, stood at the edge of the local bookstore's cluttered front steps, blending in with practiced ease. Her armor, slick, black, and designed to repel everything from microscopic toxins to an angry space rhino, was hidden beneath a long trench coat that smelled faintly of Earth's rain. Her ears, long and elegantly tapered, peeked out like the antennae of a sophisticated insect, twitching now and then in response to the faint hum of human life. Mission parameters were clear. Observe, document, return. No interactions, no emotions, no coffee, certainly no smiling or, God forbid, laughing. That last directive was burned into her cortex like a warning light on an old Starship dashboard. Persistent, annoying, and impossible to ignore once the circuit started overheating. Virelli hated the unpredictability of humans. They were chaotic, noisy, and liable to spill their drinks all over perfectly calibrated observation gear. Yet here she was, standing awkwardly in front of a sign that read, "Second-hand treasures and very questionable literature," contemplating the futility of it all. A clatter erupted behind her. She barely had time to adjust her hood before a battered paperback landed at her feet. "Sorry about that," said a voice cheerful and rough, the kind that sounded like it had spent more time arguing with traffic than in polite society. "Didn't mean to drop Moby Dick on your foot. Though if you're going to get crushed by a book, might as well be a classic, right?" Virelli looked down at the book as if it might suddenly sprout legs and run away. No such luck. The man, Tom, she would later learn, had already started laughing at his own joke, an odd sound that seemed to loosen the very air around her. "I'm Tom," he said, offering a hand that looked rough but was surprisingly warm. "And you are—" The question was simple, but her answer was not. "Observer," she said instead, a title that sounded more like a job description than an introduction. Tom blinked, his smile widening. "That's one hell of a Tinder bio. Observer. What's your favorite pastime? Watching paint dry on Mars?" Virelli's lips twitched. Not a smile. No, that would be catastrophic. But a near approximation. A subtle shift in the muscles that humans called humor. "No," she replied. "Observing humans." "And how's that going for you?" "Complicated," Tom grinned. "Complicated is a great word for Earthlings. Welcome to the club. We have jackets and questionable coffee." He pulled the door open and motioned her inside. "You want to see the weirdest things people have left behind? I promise no space rhinos." She followed, the soft clink of her armor muffled beneath the worn wooden floorboards. Inside, the air smelled of old paper, dust, and something faintly sweet, like nostalgia trapped in a jar. Tom pulled out a rubber squid from beneath the counter. "This is our mascot," he said proudly. "His name is Squiddy, and he's never seen a day in the ocean." Virelli tilted her head, processing the absurdity. "A mascot?" Tom winked. "Every good store needs one. Squiddy brings luck, or at least scares away the really bad vibes." She reached out and touched the squid, feeling its rubbery texture against her gloved fingers. "Earth customs are unpredictable." "You're telling me," Tom laughed. "So why are you really here, Observer?" "Don't tell me it's just for the squid." Virelli hesitated. Her mission was observation, yes, but something else tugged at her circuits, something she couldn't name or analyze. "I seek understanding." Tom's expression softened. Well, you're in the right place. Humans are a mess of contradictions. Like me, can't fix a printer, but can bake a mean apple pie. What about you? What's your specialty? Analysis of emotional patterns. Sounds fancy, like reading minds or hacking feelings? Varelli allowed herself a slight smirk. Not quite. More like decoding the chaos. Tom laughed again, and the sound was so genuine that for a moment, Varelli forgot about her orders, her mission, her endless spreadsheets of data to compile and upload. Well, observer, Tom said, I promise to be as chaotic as possible. But fair warning, I'm terrible at following instructions. She glanced at the clock on the wall, a relic ticking in defiance of digital time. Instructions are sometimes less important than moments. Tom raised an eyebrow. Look at you, dropping philosophical bombs like a space Buddha. Virelli considered the phrase. I am unfamiliar with Buddha. Tom grinned. Don't worry, you're already one of a kind. The bell over the door jingled as another customer wandered in, oblivious to the quiet disruption that had settled between the shelves. Virelli tucked the rubber squid under her arm and smiled. Just a little, because maybe, just maybe, there was more to this mission than protocols and reports. Maybe it was about finding those impossible, unscripted moments where the universe didn't know what to do next. And as the night deepened, she thought, maybe it was okay to be complicated. Tom's bookstore was a museum of oddities wrapped in paperbacks and bathed in a faint smell of dust and stubborn optimism. On Monday, it was the kingdom of forgotten sci-fi classics. On Tuesday, a fortress of romance novels with suspiciously dog-eared covers. And on Wednesday, well, nobody really knew what the heck happened on Wednesday, but Tom swore it was Trivia Night Apocalypse Edition. Virelli had never imagined that cataloging human culture could involve so much chaos, so much laughter, and so many awful puns. She had learned quickly that Tom's version of organization was an elaborate ritual involving piles that teetered on the edge of collapse and stacks of books that seemed to threaten a literary avalanche at any moment. The trick, Tom said once, is to know which stack is the danger zone and which is the, I swear I'm done adding books here zone. Today, we're in the danger zone. Virelli crouched next to a leaning tower of paperback space operas, her fingers delicately tracing the titles. The human attachment to printed matter is surprising. Tom laughed as he pulled a volume from the chaos. Surprising? Wait till you see the price we pay for electricity. Some people hoard books like they're batteries for the soul. Me? I'm just trying to keep the lights on and the cats fed. That reminded Virelli of the cat. Crookshanks, a creature with a permanent scowl that suggested it knew exactly how little the universe cared about its feelings. The cat had taken an immediate dislike to her, or maybe it was just a general disdain for anything not made of fur or capable of dispensing snacks on command. She watched Crookshanks stalk by, tail flicking like a mini flag of rebellion. Tom shrugged. He's a critic, really. I swear he's running a feline Yelp for this place. Virelli smiled, well, the closest approximation of a smile she dared, and thought, critics. Maybe humans and cats weren't so different after all. Every morning she returned to the bookstore, her mind a strange cocktail of mission data and the peculiar warmth of human absurdity. Tom never asked about her past, her species, or the fleet that surely orbited some distant star. Instead, he offered small invitations to normalcy. Want some tea? Not the weird space kind. Ever try Earth peanut butter? It's sticky and confusing, but somehow addictive. You know, I don't trust any being who doesn't enjoy a bad pun or two. Varelli found herself laughing when he said things like, why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. The AI embedded in her helmet had recommended against this kind of humor as inefficient communication. She ignored the advice. Efficiency was overrated. One evening after the store had closed and the last customers had vanished into the dark, Tom pulled out a battered arcade machine with flickering neon lights and a name that made Virelli raise an eyebrow. Galactic Raccoon Rampage. I used to be good at this, Tom confessed, fingers dancing clumsily over the controls. Back in the day, before the raccoons started their rebellion, Virelli watched the pixelated raccoon dodge lasers and hurl cosmic garbage with more enthusiasm than skill. It seems chaotic. That's the point, Tom grinned. Chaos with rules. Like life, right? She tilted her head. You humans revel in chaos but fear unpredictability. Tom laughed so hard he almost knocked the joystick off. You've been taking notes, haven't you? Bet you have a whole report on my tragic joystick handling. Subjective data is sometimes the most valuable. Only if it comes with a good punchline, Tom said, eyes twinkling. Virelli had begun to notice the subtle changes in herself. The sharp edges of discipline were softening, replaced by something unquantifiable. An urge to linger, to listen, to be more than an observer. The nights when the stars above her home planet blinked like judgmental eyes felt a little less distant. One such night, Tom leaned against the counter, eyes reflecting the neon glow of the arcade machine. Ever wonder why people stare at the stars and dream? Virelli considered this. They seek meaning. Or hope. She nodded. Hope is illogical. Maybe. But sometimes illogical things make the best stories. In that moment, something shifted. A tiny spark in the circuitry of her heart. A reminder that she was not just data and protocols, but something capable of wonder. The door chimed as a customer entered, breaking the reverie. Virelli smiled, something real this time, and prepared to greet them. Because if she was going to learn about humans, she might as well start with their stories, and maybe, just maybe, laugh at their jokes along the way. Tom's idea of a date was like a badly programmed robot trying to be charming, clumsy, endearing, and occasionally glitching in the most delightful ways. Ever been to a drive-in movie theater? He asked, grinning like he'd just invented the concept of pizza again. Virelli hesitated. Movies on a giant screen, under open sky. Watching humans gather in a communal ritual that involved a barrage of snacks and shouting at fictional characters? The very idea was an unpredictable variable her mission parameters hadn't prepared her for. Drive-in? She repeated. Explain. It's like ancient Earth meets modern laziness, Tom said. You park your car, watch a flick, and if the plot gets boring, you throw popcorn at the screen. It's very civilized. Virelli was intrigued by this curious blend of high-tech screen projection and low-tech human behavior. Sounds inefficient, Tom laughed. Efficiency is overrated. It's about experience, connection, and yelling at bad acting. That night, Virelli sat in the passenger seat of Tom's battered sedan, the window slightly cracked against the summer heat. She watched the horizon where the silver screen flickered to life, casting shadows across a crowd of people wrapped in blankets and clutching glowing cups. The film was The Day the Earth Stood Still, a classic tale of alien visitors and human folly. Virelli found the irony delicious. Here she was, a real alien watching humans watch aliens, critiquing the cliches and cliches, critiquing her own existence. Tom passed her a bucket of popcorn. Careful, it's addictive. Like Earth's most dangerous drug, butter. She accepted the popcorn, fingers fumbling awkwardly with the kernels. This is a social ritual? More like a snack ritual with a side of existential dread, Tom replied. But it's good. Brings people together. As the movie played, a spaceship landed on the screen with dramatic music that would have sounded suspiciously overblown if it weren't so familiar. Virelli's ears twitched. They overestimate human readiness for contact. Tom snorted. Yeah, we tend to mess things up. Remember that time you walked into my bookstore and froze like a malfunctioning android? Error. Unexpected human interaction detected, Virelli said, voice flat but tinged with amusement. Diagnostic. Embarrassment. Exactly, Tom laughed. I like you, you know. You're the only alien who's admitted to being embarrassed and made it sound cool. Virelli tilted her head. Embarrassment is inefficient. Maybe, but it's also very human. A sudden noise broke through, the unmistakable sound of a soda cup tipping over. Tom's quick reflexes saved the bucket of popcorn, but not his dignity. Great, he muttered. Earth gravity, 1G of unexpected mess. Virelli smiled, her smile, if one dared call it that. Gravity is a constant. Humans are less so. The night unfolded with an easy rhythm, snacks, laughter, shared silences that spoke volumes. For once, Virelli felt less like an observer behind a glass wall and more like a participant in the chaotic dance of life. After the movie ended, Tom looked at her with a grin. "So, what did you think?" "Predictable, yet hopeful." "That's the spirit," Tom said. "Humans are messy, but we try, mostly to avoid complete disaster." Virelli's ears flicked in agreement. "Attempting to avoid disaster is logical," Tom chuckled. "Glad to hear you say that. Maybe one day you'll bring your alien friends here. Show them how charming Earth's chaos can be." She considered the thought, then shook her head. "They would find it confusing." "And that's why they need a guide," Tom said, eyes twinkling. The night air was cool as they drove back, the stars blinking lazily above, reminding Virelli of home, of duty, distance, and the mission waiting in the dark. But now, under that canopy of infinite possibility, she found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was more to her journey than observation. Maybe the chaos of humanity held secrets worth uncovering. And as Tom hummed a terrible tune about space raccoons, Virelli laughed. Not the clinical, data-driven sound she was programmed for, but a real, imperfect human laugh that echoed into the night. Tom's laugh echoed down the quiet street as Virelli wrestled with the antiquated Earth contraption known as a lawnmower. "You sure this is how you handle a machine of destruction?" she asked, her voice steady but curious. "Absolutely," Tom replied with mock confidence. "Push it, it makes noise, and the grass gets scared into submission. Or so I'm told." Virelli gave the mower a tentative shove. It sputtered, coughed like an old starship trying to start up after decades, then roared to life with a sound that could rival a spaceship's engine. She jumped back, eyes wide. "This primitive Earth technology is aggressive." Tom grinned. "It's a love-hate relationship. Mostly hate." They moved in an oddly synchronized dance, the mower churning through the overgrown lawn while Tom narrated its secret powers in a dramatic voice. "Behold the grass-eater 3000, a beast feared across many yards. Legend says it's fueled by the tears of frustrated gardeners." Virelli chuckled, the sound a rare and precious thing in her world. "Legend? Humans seem fond of myth-making." "That's our version of history," Tom said, "with added drama and less truth." She glanced up at the sky, where satellites traced invisible paths, and the faint shimmer of a nearby space station blinked in orbit. Duty tugged at her consciousness, the data she was meant to gather, the mission reports that awaited transmission. Yet the moment held an unexpected softness, like a rare planetary alignment she hadn't anticipated. "Tom," she said cautiously, "why do you persist in these rituals?" He stopped the mower and wiped his brow with a sleeve. "Because it's the little things. The noise, the mess, the struggle. It's all proof we're alive, even if it's just against unruly grass." Virelli processed this, the concept of proof of life resonating deeper than any algorithm. Struggle as affirmation. "Exactly," Tom said, eyes sparkling. "You're catching on." Later, as they sat on the porch amid the smell of fresh-cut grass and Earth's peculiar nighttime chorus, Tom pulled out a strange device from his pocket, a handheld star chart, archaic yet lovingly annotated. "This," he said, "is how I find my way when the GPS gives up." Virelli leaned in, tracing constellations with her finger. "Humans navigate by stars." "Yep. Before satellites, we had to look up and trust the cosmos not to mess with us too much." She smiled, a real one this time, and tucked the star chart into her coat. "There is poetry in your unpredictability." Tom laughed. "And you're the muse. Think of the stories you'll tell your alien friends about this wild little planet." Her long ears twitched as she considered her path. The mission called for detachment, but here, in this small town with its flawed machines and louder hearts, she found something more elusive: connection. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A drone buzzing overhead, part of the interstellar monitoring network. A reminder that her watch was never truly over. But tonight she let the drone pass, its sensors oblivious to the quiet revolution happening in her heart. Tom nudged her gently. "Come on, observer. Time to face the chaos again." She nodded, ready to embrace the beautiful disorder that was humanity. Virelli stood at the edge of the small town's airstrip, her eyes fixed on the sleek shuttle waiting for her return to the stars. The mission had always been clear: observe, report, and remain detached. Yet now, as the engine thrummed softly beneath her boots, the weight of choice pressed heavier than any gravity she'd known. Tom appeared beside her, carrying two steaming cups of coffee, Earth-style. "You sure you're ready to leave the chaos behind?" he asked, voice light but searching. She accepted the cup, the warmth spreading through her fingers. "I am no longer certain that chaos is to be left behind." He grinned. "See, I told you Earth had its charm." Virelli smiled, a curve both alien and human, memories flashing, popcorn fights at the drive-in, lawnmower battles, late-night stargazing, and the quiet laughter shared over clumsy puns. Each moment a thread weaving her into this strange, unpredictable fabric of life. Her communicator beeped, a reminder of the fleet awaiting her final report. Duty called. The truth lay in those transmissions, but so did a secret, the raw, unquantifiable connection that had blossomed despite protocols and expectations. "I've learned something," she said, voice steady. "The mission is not just observation, but understanding. Not just data, but empathy." Tom raised an eyebrow. Deep for a gal who once called embarrassment inefficient. "Embarrassment now feels necessary," he laughed. "Welcome to the human club. Membership includes awkward moments and lots of coffee." Virelli glanced once more at the shuttle, then at the stars scattered like secrets above. "I will return, not just as a scout, but as a participant, to learn, to connect, and perhaps to belong." Tom handed her a small battered book, the one she'd admired in his store, filled with human stories of hope and folly. "For the journey," she nodded, heart pulsing with a new rhythm. "Thank you, Tom, for teaching me that even the coldest heart can be warmed by a stranger's words." He smiled. "Anytime, Queen of Chaos." As she stepped aboard the shuttle, Virelli felt the shift, a transformation not in form, but in spirit. The stars awaited, vast and infinite, but so did the possibilities of friendship, laughter, and unexpected beauty. And somewhere in the quiet vastness of space, a small part of her carried the simple truth that had touched her soul. "You are beautiful."